Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Friday Five. The greatest institution that the world has ever seen or ever will see is the church that Jesus promised to build in Matthew 16 and verse 18. Now, the church Jesus was talking about there was a universal kingdom that would stretch throughout all of the world and spread throughout all the borders of all of the nations and would have an influence upon the world unlike anything else that the world had ever seen before. But as someone wisely said, the local church is the universal church with legs on it. You and I will probably never have much interaction with the universal church. We may not meet Christians from vast areas of the world, but we do come into contact with the local church, and it is there that we see the greatest power and the greatest influence of the church itself. So I want to share with you 5 things today that I believe will be helpful to us, even in the midst of a pandemic, to make the church stronger, to make it more vibrant, and to help it bring glory to God. The first thing I want to tell you about is that we owe the church our steadfast interest. In 1 Corinthians 16 and verse 13, the Apostle Paul talks about the household of Stephanas, how they were addicted to the work. In other words, their attention, their focus, their energy was all on the church and all on the work of the church. Somebody once said that the phrase no good if detached is not only true of concert and sporting tickets, but it's also true of the church. In this time of pandemic, it may be easy because for several weeks and months we were not able to meet in a centralized location. It might be easy for many of us just to kick back and separate ourselves from the church, not stay connected. We need that connection. We need that attachment to the church. And one of the greatest needs of the church today is for every member to have a sense of responsibility, to look out for one another and to make sure that things still are accomplished that the church can accomplish. So we need to give the church our steadfast interest. The second thing we can give to the church is our cooperation. One of the beautiful things about the early church that we read of in Acts chapter 4 is the text says they were of one heart and of one soul. They were so cooperative with one another, it was as if one person was functioning the entire time. They were willing to do whatever it took to make sure that the needs of the church were taken care of. Paul constantly referred to those that he worked with as his fellow laborers or his fellow soldiers. Paul developed a team spirit among them. It was the team that was involved. We all rise or we all fall together. The third thing we can do is to lend the church our influence. Somebody once said, sociologists I think, that everybody has influence over at least 60 people at any given time. And you say, I don't have that many friends. Well, you may not have that many friends, but you do come in contact with a lot more people than you may realize. What about the people at the grocery store? What about the people in a restaurant? What about people at work? What about people you just run into on some type of regular basis? You're having an influence on them. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 3 and verse 2, you are our epistle, known and read of all men. People are watching you. People are looking at how you handle these difficult times and these difficult situations. They're looking to see if you're loving and compassionate and obedient. And so we can really have an influence on people if we just behave as Christians should behave. The fourth thing that we can do is give the church our consistent contribution. Yes, I know we're not meeting a lot in a centralized way as we once were. And so power bills and whatnot may be down so far as churches are concerned, but the work of the church still continues. Paul says to the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 7 that they needed to complete what they had promised to do over a year before. And whenever we commit ourselves to a local church, we promise certain things. We promise to give our energy, we promise to give our attention, we promise to give our time, and we also promise to give our money because it does take money for the work of the church to go on. And even though we may not have as high a bills as we normally would, we still have things for the church to do. We have missionaries in the field who need our assistance and need our help. And so we need to consistently contribute so that the church will be able to continue to function and do the things that it needs to do. One final thing I want to share with you, and that is we owe it our regular attention. I say it that way, and it's a strange way, and on the screen you'll see it spelled strangely as well. But what I mean by that is, even though some of us have returned to live worship services, some of us may not have. Some of us may not be able to because of compromised health conditions and so forth. But whatever it is, we can still do something. We can still give our attention to what is going on with the church. And if we're worshiping online, well, then we can be there online and we can participate in those. We can comment, we can like, we can share, as we've often told you before. We can tell our friends and our neighbors, hey, our church is offering something great, and I want to tell you about it. And that's a way that we can show our attention. And if you're able to be there live and in person, I want to encourage you to be there as much and as often as you can, and to be as encouraging as you can. We have to keep our distance. We have to be socially distant, as we're all aware. But we can still have a smile on our face. We can still wave at someone warmly and encourage them by the fact that we know they're there and that we are striving to continue and give our attention to the church. Well, these are just a few things, and I hope they're helpful to you, and I appreciate you joining us today for the Friday Five.